There are names in football that transcend the game itself, names that don't just echo in highlight reels or trophy cabinets, but in the quiet, sacred space where loyalty meets art. Alessandro Del Piero is one of those names. Before Instagram, goals and viral celebrations, before football became a business of brands and billions, there was a man who played with his heart tucked inside every pass. A man who made silence beautiful. A man who never needed to shout, because the world listened when he played. He wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest, but he moved like a brushstroke, effortless, timeless, like jazz in the rain. In Turin, they still whisper his name like a prayer. Del Piero, the boy who grew into a captain, then into a monument, not because he stayed at the top, but because he stayed when it crumbled. When Juventus fell to Serie B in 2006, when fans wept and stars fled, Del Piero stayed, not out of obligation, not for money, but because the black and white stripes were stitched into his soul. That loyalty, it's rare now. It's old-fashioned. It's inconvenient in a world of quick deals and quicker exits. But that's what makes it unforgettable. And somewhere today, in a different part of the world, another boy is lacing up his boots under a different sky. Lamine Yamal. Just 16. No tattoos, no headlines yet, just talent, just silence. The kind of silence that says, I'm not here to talk, I'm here to stay. As Barcelona rebuilds its broken mosaic, as memories of Messi still hang like ghosts over Camp Nou, some believe this boy might be the one to carry the soul of a club. But greatness isn't built in a week. It's tested in storms, measured in the choices we make when no one's watching, in the quiet moments, when you could leave, but choose to stay, when you could shout, but choose to act. So before we talk about Lamine, before we gaze at what could be, let's return. Let's remember. Let's step into the life of a gentleman, a warrior, a silent artist, the man who taught us how to win without pride, how to lose without shame, and how to stay when staying meant everything. This is not just the story of a footballer. This is the story of Alessandro Del Piero and what it means to belong. Before he was the captain, before he was the heartbeat of Turin, he was just Alessandro, a shy boy from Conegliano in the north of Italy, where the vineyards stretch like verses of a forgotten poem, and football was something you played, on gravel, not grass. He didn't come from glamour, no elite academies, no early fame, just a quiet house, a loving family, and a ball that never left his feet. His older brother Stefano was the first to dream, but life, as it often does, gave him a different path. So he passed the dream down, like an heirloom, to the younger boy with the soft voice and fierce eyes. Every afternoon, little Alessandro would run down the hills, dust kicking up behind him, barely taller than the goalposts, but already dancing past defenders twice his size. He wasn't trying to impress. He was simply free. Free in the way only children are. Free in the way football used to be. At 13, he joined Padova. At 16, he was on their first team, facing grown men, standing against stadiums of doubt. And yet, he never flinched. He didn't need to, because even then the ball listened to him. Not just followed, listened. His touches were soft but spoke loudly. His passes whispered meaning. His shots, like poetry written in motion, not just powerful but precise, always landing where silence fell next. In 1993, Juventus came calling. The moment he wore the black and white stripes, something in the world aligned, like he had always belonged there, like the jersey was made for him years before he was born. And then came the goals, October 1993, his first Serie A goal. A clean finish, no celebration, just a nod to the sky and a quiet jog back to the halfway line, as if to say, there's more coming, and there was. 1 week later, a hat trick against Parma. At just 19, in only his second full appearance. But It wasn't just the goals, it was how he scored them. One curled with the outside of his foot, as if he was placing a kiss into the top corner. One lobbed with an elegance that didn't just defeat the keeper, it embarrassed gravity. Fans didn't just cheer, they watched, breathless, because this wasn't football, this was art. He earned a nickname, Il Pinturicchio, after the Renaissance painter. Because while others bulldozed their way through defenses, Del Piero painted his path, and soon the world began to see. By the mid-90s, he was a symbol of Juventus, not by shouting, not by posing, but by creating magic, over and over without asking for applause. He scored goals that didn't just win matches, they told stories, a free kick bent like a falling leaf, a volley that sliced through the cold Turin night like a comet, a chip over the keeper so calm it felt divine. But behind every goal, there was still the boy from Conegliano. Humble, soft-spoken. When reporters crowded him, he smiled. When fans screamed his name, he waved quietly. There was no look at me, only look at the game, and perhaps that's what made him different. In a sport already beginning to change, with flash, with ego, with noise, Del Piero remained silent. But in that silence, there was greatness. Because true greatness doesn't demand attention. It commands it. Gently, beautifully, without trying. And in those early years, as he danced across the pitches of Italy and Europe, he wasn't just scoring goals. He was showing us something rare. That football could still be poetry. That grace still had a place. That being kind, loyal, and elegant wasn't a weakness. It was a choice, a powerful one. And as he lifted his first trophies, as he became the poster boy of Juventus, he never forgot where he came from. Never forgot the hills of Conegliano. Never forgot that football is a gift, not a platform, not a brand. A gift, one that he chose to share, one gentle touch at a time. By the mid-90s, the boy had become the brush and the pitch, his canvas. While others sprinted, shouted, and celebrated with clenched fists, Del Piero moved like a whisper. A soft rhythm in a stadium full of thunder. He wasn't built for Fersen, but somehow, on the battlefield of elite football, he was the one who disarmed armies, with a glance, a glide, and a goal. The late 90s were a golden time for Juventus. And at the heart of it, wearing number 10 like it was sewn onto his soul, was Alessandro Del Piero. He led Juventus to 3 Serie A titles in 5 years, Champions League finals, European nights under the floodlights, pressure thick as fog. And yet, he never lost his balance. In a world where defenders kicked first and apologized never, Del Piero danced between them, soft touches, quick turns. He didn't just avoid pain, he turned it into poetry. There's one goal they still talk about in Turin. The year was 1997, Champions League. Borussia Dortmund, Del Piero takes a corner. The ball comes back to him near the edge of the box. He doesn't look, he doesn't rush. With the outside of his right foot, he curls it not into the net, into eternity. A goal so delicate, so perfectly arrogant, that commentators went silent. And that was his style. He didn't need to dominate. He needed only moments. And in those moments, he made time stop. They called it the Del Piero zone, that small space to the left of the penalty box, where the angle is tight, the shot almost impossible. But if the ball found his feet there, the net would ripple. Every single time. It became a signature, not just a technique, a language. He spoke with goals, not in numbers, but in emotions. Each finish carried a message. This game can still be beautiful, and yet even as his legend grew, he stayed human. Off the pitch, he avoided scandal, no parties, no tabloid chaos. Just a quiet life, a love of books and his wife Sonia, whom he met before the fame and never left behind. His teammates called him Il Capitano, with affection, not fear. He was not a general barking orders, but an older brother, steady and calm. Young players came to him not for tactics, but for warmth, for the feeling that even under the heaviest lights they were safe near him, and he never raised his voice. He didn't need to, because when he spoke, people leaned in. But the battlefield always demands blood. And in 1998, it came. Horrific knee injury, a torn ligament, the kind that ends careers, ends dreams. For months he disappeared. No headlines, no updates, just rehab. Silence. Doubt. Fans wondered, is it over? And when he came back, he wasn't the same. The explosion of pace was gone. The quickness dulled. But here's where the artist became something more. Something deeper. He adapted. He rewrote his own rhythm. If he couldn't outrun you, he'd outthink you. If he couldn't twist past 3 defenders, he'd place the ball where none of them could follow. He became slower, but wiser. And more dangerous than ever. This wasn't talent. This was mastery. And fans saw it, felt it, loved him more for it, because it wasn't just about skill anymore. It was about soul. He didn't play to impress. He played to express. In 2001, he lost his father. Suddenly. Quietly. Del Piero didn't speak to the press. He didn't ask for sympathy. He just returned to the field and scored. A free kick, curved like a question mark in the rain. No celebration. Just a glance to the sky, a sun saying thank you, a goodbye in silence. That goal wasn't for the fans. It was for one man watching from above, and we all cried, because that's what Del Piero did. He reminded us that football, at its best, isn't just about winning. It's about memory, about meaning, about those invisible strings that tie you to something bigger. So yes, he was an artist, but not the kind who paints for applause. He painted because it was the only way he knew how to feel alive. And for over a decade, Juventus felt alive with him. Every game, every touch, a reminder that even in battle there can be grace, that elegance is a form of courage. Greatness is never just built in golden summers. It's forged in winter. And in the summer of 2006, the sky over Juventus turned black. What began as whispers became an earthquake. The Calciopoli scandal, match fixing, corruption, tapes, trials, names dragged through mud, trophies erased, reputations shattered, and Juventus, the most decorated club in Italy, was sentenced to fall, not in standings, but in soul. They were relegated, stripped of titles. Their name, once sacred, now covered in shame. And when the verdict came, the stars began to scatter. One by one, they packed their bags. Zambrotta, Thuram, Cannavaro, Emerson, world-class players, gone overnight. No one blamed them. Why? Stay in the second division when you've just won the World Cup? Why stay? When your legacy is at stake? And yet, one man didn't leave. He had offers. Lucrative contracts from top clubs. A chance to escape the fall, preserve his glory. But Del Piero stayed. No press conference. No heroic speech, just a quiet nod, and the same black and white jersey on his back. And in that moment he became more than a legend. He became a symbol, because staying, when leaving, is easy. That's what defines the soul. Serie B was no fairy tale. The pitches were rough, the stadium small, the air thick with doubt and mockery. Juventus, once kings of Europe, now traveling to places they'd never imagined. The fans were angry, the country divided, and every away game felt like a trial, but Del Piero never complained. He didn't sulk. He didn't act like he was too big for this. Instead, he trained harder, spoke less, scored more. That season, he finished as the top scorer of Serie B, 21 goals. Each one not just a number, but a brick in the rebuilding of something sacred, and he wasn't alone. Gigi Buffon stayed, So did Trezeguet, Nedved, Camoranesi, Chiellini. But it was Del Piero, the captain, who led them, not by shouting, but by standing. Every time he stepped onto a second division pitch, he reminded the world, we may be down here, but we are not down. One afternoon in Naples, as Juventus faced Napoli in a hostile away match, fans hurled insults. Banners mocked them. Smoke filled the air. Del Piero scored a stunning volley. No celebration. He jogged back, face blank. Not in arrogance, but in defiance. That image, that silent walk through fire, became iconic. He didn't need to raise his fist. His presence was enough. Juventus won promotion, returned to Serie A in Nimaide just one season. But something had changed, not just in the club, in Del Piero. He had gone through the fire and come out softer but unbroken. The fans adored him more than ever, not just for what he could do with the ball, but for what he chose to do when the ball wasn't enough. They sang his name louder, not for the goals, but for the dignity, the quiet nobility, the old-school honor in a new-school game. And when journalists asked him later, "Why did you stay?" he smiled gently, "Because this is my home." Simple, profound. In a world where loyalty is often a hashtag, Del Piero showed what it looks like in real time, not dramatic, not perfect, but patient and true. And in that storm, he didn't just save a club, he saved something even rarer. Romance. That beautiful idea that a player can belong to a club like a heart belongs to a body, that a name can be more than a brand, it can be a vow. When Juventus returned to the top flight, they weren't just a football team again, they were whole. And the captain? He didn't ask for applause, he simply smiled, waved to the crowd, and walked on. Because storms don't break the strong, they reveal them, and Alessandro Del Piero stood tall in the rain. The end never comes with a bang. Not for the quiet ones, not for those who never needed to be loud. For Alessandro Del Piero, the end came softly, like dusk settling over a city that once cheered his every move. In 2012, after nearly 2 decades at Juventus, the club announced he would not be renewed. There was no scandal, no fallout, just time, catching up. But how do you say goodbye to a cathedral you helped build, to a jersey that feels like skin, to fans who didn't just love you but saw you as one of their own? The answer is, you don't. You just walk quietly. One last time. On May 13, 2012, Juventus played their final match of the season. They were champions again. An unbeaten run. A fairy tale ending. And as the final whistle blew, Del Piero stood alone in the middle of the pitch. He had come full circle. From the boy who had arrived in 1993 to the captain who had led through golden years through fire and back into light, he was no longer just a footballer, he was history wrapped in boots. The crowd stood. Tears fell. And then, something unforgettable happened. The game had ended. But the fans refused to leave. They chanted his name for over 20 minutes. "Allez, allez, allez." He began walking around the stadium, not for a lap of honor, but a final farewell. He paused in front of the curva, looked up, thousands of hands reached down, as if trying to hold on to the last seconds of a dream. He didn't wave. He just placed his hand on his heart, because words would have broken the moment. And then, he did something even more poetic. He walked off the field, in the 59th minute. Not because of injury, not because of tactics. It was arranged so that his last steps would belong to him, not to time, not to anyone else. And as he walked toward the tunnel, he looked up. One last time. A captain. A child of Turin. Saying goodbye not to a stadium but to a lifetime. That image, him walking slowly, head held high, eyes full of gratitude, will never leave us. It wasn't a farewell. It was a love letter, but legends don't vanish, they just change form. Del Piero moved to Australia, Sydney FCA, place where no one expected him to go. But that's the thing about artists. They don't retire. They just wander. In Australia, he played with kids who grew up watching him on TV. He mentored them, encouraged them, scored goals that didn't matter on paper, but meant everything to those who witnessed them. Because when you've tasted the Champions League, it's not easy to step onto a field with 5,000 fans. But Del Piero never played for numbers. He played for the game. After Australia, he tried one last dance in India, a brief chapter, more symbolic than competitive. And then, he stopped. No press conference, no dramatic farewell, just silence. Again. Today he lives between Los Angeles and Italy, running his football academy, appearing on TV sometimes, but never stealing the spotlight. When he speaks, it's still soft, measured, like every word matters, because he knows. Legends don't need to shout. They've already said enough, with their actions. What remains most powerful about Del Piero isn't his goals, not the trophies, not the highlight reels. It's the stillness, the dignity. The way he made you feel is like football was still pure, that somewhere in the chaos there was still one man playing, because he loved it. No agenda, no brand, just love. He once said, "The ball has always been my compass." And, even now, off the pitch in this strange world of punditry, contracts, and chaos, you sense he's still quietly following it, letting it lead him, wherever grace still matters. In Turin, they still hang his jersey in windows. Not because of what he won, but because of how he stayed. And around the world, in quiet cafes, in old football pubs, in the hearts of fans who still believe that sport can be noble, the name Del Piero still carries weight. Not the weight of a superstar, but the warmth of someone who played for all the right reasons, and that may be the rarest thing of all. The cheers faded, the lights dimmed, and Alessandro Del Piero walked off into the soft silence of memory. But legends, they don't disappear. They echo, not just in stadiums, but in values, in choices, in the way one touches a football, not to dominate but to belong. And now, under a different sky in a city painted in deep crimson and blue, another boy laces up his boots. Lamine Yamal, 16 years old, still learning how to move under the weight of legacy. Still trying to find his voice in a place once owned by giants. They say he's special, but the world is loud now. Every touch becomes content. Every mistake becomes a headline. And silence has become a luxury few can afford. Yet something about this boy that feels different. He doesn't talk much. He doesn't celebrate wildly. He moves with intention, like the ball is something sacred. And when he plays, those who truly watch see something rare. Not just potential, but purity, the kind Del Piero once carried. Not on his back, but in his heart. Barcelona, too, is rebuilding, trying to remember who they were. After Messi, after the noise. And maybe, just maybe, this boy can help them remember. But greatness is not in what you do when the world is watching. It's in what you choose when no one is. Will he stay when it's easier to run? Will he pass when he could shine? Will he play not for fame, but for the joy that started it all? No one knows. Not yet. But here's what we do know. Alessandro Del Piero showed us that elegance can lead, that loyalty can inspire, that silence can echo longer than any shout. And perhaps, somewhere inside Lamine Yamal, those echoes are being heard. Not to copy, not to follow, but to remind us that football is still at its core, a beautiful story, a boy, a ball, a choice. That's all it takes to begin a legend. So stay with us, because in our next episode, we step into the world of Lamine Yamal, his dreams, his decisions, his silence. Can he be the new soul of Barcelona? Can he carry the weight without losing the joy? Wait for it. Watch it unfold. The next chapter is just beginning.